each and every one of you. I am so pleased. I mean, this is just the heart of democracy, and I just absolutely love it. So I'm very sincere in saying welcome. This is the vacation home rental, who does what, and then a listening session to get a wide variety of views. Are we all in the right place?
Yes.
Yes. Can you clarify this is for the county and not the city?
Yes. It is for the unincorporated area of the county. I'm Sherry Rafferty, and I'm your El Dorado County Treasurer and Tax Collector, and I represent the operations from one portion of what's required in the code. So I'd like to introduce staff. This is Louise and Jenny. They're going to try to take notes because we want to take everyone's point of view and bring it back to the ad hoc committee that has been started. Sue Navasal, hope it's okay, is back, who is on a board of supervisors, and Mike Rinaldi, who I don't think is expected today, okay, is also on the ad hoc committee. And anyway, they have started an ad hoc committee to study and develop evidence with regards to this issue. So they are very interested in it and sincere in wanting to, I think, as I am, hear everybody's point of view, everybody's suggestions, everybody's problem solving, that type of thing. First, what we're going to do, and I'd like you to just bear with me for a few minutes, okay? I'm going to explain some of the rules that are in the vacation home rental ordinance because they might be somewhat misunderstood just a little. Then, after I go through what some of those rules are so that we're all on the same baseline, so to speak, what I'd like to do is have what I'm calling a listening session, and I'm going to ask you to take turns, one person at a time, speak, and I'd like you, because we have a bit of a crowd, to try to keep it short, to the point, about 3 minutes, okay? And everyone will be called upon. I'm not leaving until you get your not only 3 minutes, but when we go to the next subject, another 3 minutes. But if you would raise your hand. Another rule I'd like you to follow is that everybody's opinion is valid. Okay? It's your opinion. Okay? If I think the world is flat, it's still my opinion, and I'm allowed to express that opinion. So respect others in the group. Okay? They may have an opposite opinion of yours, but that's all right. We're a democracy. That's what a democracy is all about. Be respectful of others. When we get to that session, I would like you to raise your hand. And if you want to speak, wait until you're called upon. Are there any reporters in the room? Okay, if you would, I'd ask you to keep your questions until the very end. Okay? Because this is a time for our citizens. Right? Okay. So I introduce staff. I need to pass out the PowerPoints. I think we have one for everyone that's in the room at the time. Okay. So Louise is going to do that. Along with Jenny, I guess. And I have to make an apology to Sue Navasal. I misspelled your name for the umpteenth millionth time. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Jerry.
So I want to go over the information regarding the ad hoc committee. Sue Navasal and Mike Rinaldi, the CAO's office, is represented. Where's Sue? Where's Sue Henneke? She's here a minute ago. There she is, way in the back. Okay. Is on the committee and also in the last committee, the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office was represented, County Council, Environmental Management. Did I miss anybody? Okay. I'm on page 4. And I've been tasked today, and Sue Navasol and Sue Henneke can verify this, that I've been tasked to convey to you, and I'm going to repeat it twice, okay? And this is from the committee, the ad hoc committee. Not one alternative has been tossed out. Nothing is off the table. I'm going to repeat that. This is from the committee. And I quote, not one alternative has been tossed out. Nothing is off the table.
Does anyone need a
The
copy?
treasurer tax collector is represented, they're the two board members, it's their ad hoc committee. The CAO's office is represented, county council is in there, environmental management, they intend to do some evidence development relative to this. My role is to,
Can I just ask a question about the composition of your ad hoc committee? Do you have planning department staff represented in that committee?
I don't know, Sue, planning represented,
There will be, not as of yet. We've only had one meeting.
yeah.
Or we just
But
started.
they will be involved,
Yep.
yes, I would envision that they would be involved in the future.
Are you having anybody from a management company or rental company managing?
Right now, it's just our staff. It's just two board members, the ad hoc committee of the Board of Supervisors, with staff talking, and we're going to have public meetings starting probably in January.
Okay, I'm here today, as I said, to provide information and then to listen to your concerns. I'm going to have staff write, because, you know, I'm getting to that age where I can't remember everything. So I might miss one, I misspell names. Anyway, and then I'm going to ask you that when you're talking about a particular situation, if you could also tell me about, was the situation reported, to whom was it reported, and then I'd like to listen to problem-solving suggestions to resolve future issues. I think the ordinance can be a little bit confusing at times, so please bear with me just a little bit, be patient. And part of the confusion is who to go to, because some might not understand which department does what. So I'm going to start out with going through what department, starting with the Board of Supervisors. And this might be helpful to those of you who want to change the ordinance in some way to realize where these things occur, okay? The hearings are held, and conceptual approval happens as a very first step with our Board of Supervisors. So I'm on page 6. And that is in a separate meeting.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there's a chair over here, so
Oh, is there? Okay.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you.
appreciate you coming. Public notices and public hearings are always done prior to adoption to a notice, so it's not secret. You don't want a government that is a secret government. There's also some chairs in the middle. The ordinance is either approved or rejected by the Board of Supervisors. You can amend an ordinance, so once you have one, you can amend one from time to time based on input from citizens just like yourselves and other government agencies or in consultation with county council. The ordinance is a living document. It's able to evolve. Our current vacation home rental ordinance has not been static. It has had some changes. Most recently, for example, the permit number is required on all advertising, and the other change to the ordinance was set hours for hot tubs. Moving along from the board to the sheriff's department. The sheriff's office is the one that responds to calls when there is a complaint. They're the ones that are basically the boots on the ground kind of thing. Initially, they'll assess the situation for non-compliance to the vacation home rental ordinance and other legal issues. They educate, they advise, they cite, and when appropriate, they occasionally arrest. They'll assist the homeowner or the property manager with an eviction if necessary. They have a dispatch that takes calls any time of the day or night. They talk to if the complainant wants a call back, they will call. Is there anybody from the sheriff's department here, by the way? There's extra seats kind of in the middle. You're welcome.
No, don't.
They assess the situation, and it begins the process of collecting the facts of each particular incident. They talk to the renter and determine if there is a valid permit. They ask for the contract. Very often it's on a phone because it's actually a violation if you don't have some things in that contract. So they call the local contact person if they need to come out to the vacation home rental. I call that a 1-hour local contact person because they're supposed to show up within an hour. The sheriff office, if there's noise, explains to the renter that they are to follow the law and they need to quiet down, basically. He tries to estimate the number of occupants and guests, how many overnight occupants. Sometimes the renter tells them that, yeah, he has a contract for 10 people, but they've got 14 people in the house. Sometimes they don't. He inquires about there's a requirement that there be a sign posted regarding the hours for the hot tub, and other signs are supposed to be up at the rental. The permit has to be posted, etc. Where they're supposed to park has to be posted. But anyway, like I said, he occasionally, this is my time, okay? I'm sorry. So if you write it down, if you have a question, kind of, do you have a pen?
I've got
Okay.
means to do so.
Okay. So occasionally, like I said, it's up to and including an eviction. Occasionally you arrest somebody who might be a present danger to him or herself, and may arrest for other violations of the law. The sheriff's department is basically responsible for writing a report. After the report is approved in the sheriff's department, it's sent to the tax collector's office, either in whole or in part. Going on to what the tax collector's office does. Our job, one way to think about it, our job in the tax collector's office is very similar to the DA's. We're not the boots on the ground, okay, but we investigate and we basically prosecute the case based on whether the evidence allows us to do that. We monitor a telephone hotline. Oh, and by the way, we investigate all complaints. All complaints. We collect evidence from all the parties. We can't just say, okay, we've listened to the complainant, and then not get the owner's side of it, or the management company's side of it, or the renter's side of it, or any of those kinds of things. We have to put all of that evidence together. For those cases where the individual admits a violation, the violation is immediately imposed. Nope, I didn't have my permit posted. Nope, I didn't have the number of people that were allowed in the house in the contract. That's basically slammed up. Okay? However, there are some instances where the owner or the agent requests an appeal, and we have a hearing officer. I am not the hearing officer. Okay, that's somebody else, it's an attorney. And the owner or the agent must request that appeal in writing to our office. Anyway, the hearing officer will weigh the evidence and then make a final determination. We have a case file on each incident, not just each house, but each incident, because each one of those must be treated separately. We do a lot of calling. We do a lot of repeat calling because it's difficult to get in touch with some of the people involved. All the calls, all the emails, all the correspondence is kept in the file, all the written documentation. We make every attempt to contact the complainant and ask if they are willing to sign a declaration of some sort, just putting the facts down. If yes, we send them a form. We attempt to contact the renter because sometimes the renter will say things that the owner will not say. And again, that's evidence that we could use when we bring it to a hearing. We ask the complainant if they would like to attend the hearing. They do not have to attend the hearing. A signed declaration is just fine. It's the facts of the case. There's no appearance. They don't have to take a day off work or anything along those lines. We have to request a written declaration from the owner or the owner's agent to get, quote, their side of the story. We examine all the declarations in the rental agreement, find out what efforts, if any, were made to avoid the violation. So I'm going to use an extreme, okay? If somebody picks up the trash within 15 minutes, they have made an effort to mitigate the situation. If they leave it for 5 days, they didn't make what I would call a best efforts. Okay, those are two extremes, right? So I mean, we could use other issues. We search the websites for advertisements, and one of the violations is if you don't put the permit number in the advertisement, then that is a violation. Unfortunately, this takes some time because you have to allow a certain number of days for all the parties to respond, schedule a hearing, you have to allow them days when they can meet at the hearing. Anyway, there's some formal notices that have to occur. We have I do have to tell you, we have a growing trend that fewer written declarations are being handed in. We can talk about the why of that perhaps later, okay? If violations are appealed by the owner or the agent, it means that we have to schedule, and then we have to give the owner or the agent X number of days regarding that date. We prosecute the case, and then we receive the outcomes of the hearings. There's a couple of chairs. Okay. All right. Now, it isn't legally required, but we perceive part of our job as attempting to educate the public, the renters, the owners, the agents, as to what their responsibilities are. And so some time ago, we developed a Good Neighbor program brochure. We have lots of them. This is like one. And in it, it has information and also, we hope, a tone that says, please be respectful of your neighbors and their peace and repose, that they have a right to peace and repose. So We've also put in there a place where they can put the local contact person, so if they're next door neighbor, and you can get that information from our office at any time, 8 to 5, by the way. Okay. We're beginning a brochure because this one was basically for the South Lake Tahoe Basin, but because there's some different rules in different areas, such as Meek Bay, where they have slightly different snow removal, parking on the street during snow removal conditions, rules. There, it's from October to May, you can't park on the street at all. So that was slightly different than the basin, which, and I'm not talking about the city, I'm just talking about the unincorporated area, where you cannot park on the street during snow removal conditions. And this is
Sheriff, when they're parking in front of somebody else's house?
Yes.
Maybe it was in Tahoe, in the city. But
Well,
is it
first
a
of all-
violation to park in front of somebody else's house?
I've called the Highway Patrol, and there is a different...
That's not their jurisdiction.
No, where? There is a difference between overnight parking, which is addressed in the ordinance, and non-overnight parking. Okay, guests are allowed to park on a public street. Guests, okay? Not the overnight people, not the people staying in the residence, okay? So, couple of things. If there's cars parked for 3 days, you can call and have them removed. If anybody is in somebody's driveway, again, you can call and have them removed. It is extremely difficult to identify whether they are a guest or not. Talk to the sheriff's department. It's just very difficult. Yes.
This past winter, we had a lot of problems with people parking on the street during snow removal conditions, and the plow operators came through and honked their horn loud and clear at 2 o'clock in the morning and woke us all up. I don't blame the plow operators, they've got a tough job, but I don't want to be awakened again at 2 o'clock in the morning because these people can't follow the rules. I would ask that the county's transportation department also be included in this ad hoc committee so that parking and snow removal conditions can be addressed, because I'm not going to be awakened again at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'll be calling supervisors at 2 o'clock in the morning if it happens again. That's unacceptable, and it's very unsafe because, as you point out, if the plows can't get through, the ambulance can't, and neither can the fire department, neither can the cops. And that's not acceptable either.
Yeah, I think that's a really important issue, and she's taking notes on this, and I will pass that along. You, and then you.
I don't have a vacation home across the street. I have a mini hotel across the street. And I'm sure in a lot of these mini hotels, there is just not enough parking. And people have to park on the street because there's not enough parking in the drive or the garage. I've been forced to put yellow cones out in front of my house just to keep people away from my house. There's not enough parking at any one of these places. I mean, if they're going to build this big place, you should have on-site parking for cars.
They're supposed to have I'll call it a map or a schematic in each one of the vacation home rentals that says that they can park in the driveway and immediately in front of the vacation home rental property, okay? That's where their overnight guests are supposed to park. Yes, sir?
I have addressed a specific property across the street. I have 4 in a row, as you all know, side by side. One of them, I've addressed the issue with you that they have no paved parking at all, and you've permitted this vacation rental. I would like to know whose responsibility it is to make sure they have an adequate parking space for their allowed vehicles, whether it's you or TRPA, and who's going to actually make them put in a legitimate parking space.
It would be with building planning and the permitting process for the vacation home.
You told me that, and it's never been addressed. It just got vanished.
How can they not have a parking place and be permitted?
Well, they can have a parking space if it's in, do you have a garage?
No,
Okay, do you have a driveway at all?
no.
Well, then, but again, I'm not the expert on the planning issue.
But you permit these vacation rentals, so you have a
Only
responsibility
have planning
to
signs
inspect the
up.
property before, to see that they have adequate parking, legitimate parking, before you permit it. You should be responsible for that.
And we don't inspect the property, and I'm just telling you what we don't do.
So how do you know if it's I mean, they're saying one thing about the property, but how do you know that that's true if you don't inspect the property?
Just from a tax collector's perspective, it's a planning issue if they're permitting it at all. Okay, so planning, building departments have their responsibilities and we have our responsibilities.
So if planning and building is not in the loop,
They are in the loop.
okay,
If they do nothing though, then what, then whose
then how did
responsibility
this
is
place
it?
get permitted if it didn't have a driveway or a garage?
I can't see, I'm not responsible for that area.
Is someone who is responsible here today?
Beg your pardon?
Is someone who is responsible here today?
Not that I know.
Why not?
I'm sorry, I didn't know, I mean, I
Well,
don't
we
know.
raised
These are
issues
these
of
issues.
land use issues at the Board of Supervisors meeting, and I'm disappointed that there's no planner here.
But what my responsibility is today is to take that concern, make sure that it's brought both to the ad hoc committee and to the planning and building department.
And we've been told that
Yeah.
before, and yet the ball continues to drop, which is why we're here today again.
Well, it's also a process. And I have to go back to that process that I talked about. I'm not sure you were here, first part of the meeting.
I've been
But,
here the whole meeting,
You know,
yes.
it is a process to change the ordinance, and I am sure that all members of the board want to be thoughtful and evidence-based in those decisions. Okay, so we will present that. What I'm saying is your comments, I'm going to go, so I will come back. Yes, sir.
Harry Truman's desk had a sign that says the buck stops here. That's over there in that corner. Like the county supervisor, I don't hear one word from her.
Because this isn't my meeting, let me be really clear on this. This is
The buck
Sherry's
stops
meeting.
here.
Absolutely, and we have a committee, and we're starting that committee. We will be having public meetings and having that discussion. I've told you that, you know that we're gonna be having that discussion. Sherry asked to have this meeting today so she could get input for her, just for her department. She's an elected official also. She has, the way she works for her tax collecting department. This is the way she wanted to work her tax collecting department with the vacation rental as far as her enforcement area is concerned. She wanted to hear the concerns that she's been having these meetings for several years, I believe, every now and then. What we're planning on doing for a Board of Supervisors is addressing the issues in a way that we can change ordinances. And that process has just started. We've had 2 staff meetings. We're going to be having public meetings. And we will be discussing what changes we can do. But that's separate than what this conversation is today. This is about Sherry talking about how she deals with her enforcement issues. And I'm just jumping up to make sure that everyone's
I
clear.
want to point out that the gentleman over here, he had both a complaint and a recommended solution. And the important part, obviously, is those 2 things. What was the specific complaint? Did he report it? He did. And then what is his proposed solution? And for that particular individual, I mean, that he talked about, the solution is to not allow them to that particular one, not to be able to rent to somebody with more than 1 car that fits on the driveway, or something close to that.
Well, it should have never been permitted as
Well,
vacation
or not
rentals.
permitted at all, okay?
Yeah.
So what we want to do is not attack people or anything of that nature, but to be solution, problem-solving oriented in a respectful way, okay? Where we respect other people's opinions, that's important, okay? And we're all entitled to our own opinion, okay? So, parking. Yes, ma'am.
So the VHR next to me or across from me, what they do is they tell the tenants that, well, you're only supposed to have 4 cars, but if you pay me extra, then up to $500 per car, then I'll allow you to have extra cars, because that's what I get fined from the tax collector's office. And we reported it to the sheriff's department and to you guys, and again, it's just an issue with us. That's what they're telling me.
How could that be? I mean, if somebody continually gets violations, their permit gets pulled, so that can't be accurate.
Well, and
How could that
that,
be accurate? $500 every time, somebody eventually will lose their permit, which is my case right now. We follow the
No,
rules,
wait a
we
minute,
follow.
let her-
I realize that, but that is not accurate. There's no way that's accurate, that they pay a fine at $500 every time. You pull the permit. You
Right.
must pull a permit.
so we did get them suspended, but they're continuing to do it.
So they're not illegal.
Right. So, I mean, they're out of their suspension now, but we've had them suspended twice. They've always been a nightmare for us, and
The
I'm not
number of
lying.
cars is objective. That should be crystal clear. If there's too many cars there, there should be a citation. That is
When-
subjective.
And I call every single time. I call the sheriff's department, and I call Miss Rafferty, and I let them know, and I call the homeowner.
And it should be clear, if it's more than the number of cars, that is subjective, then there should be a violation and the permit should be pulled.
Right, and which it has been in the past. It has been, no question about. But I'm just saying that this happens.
We want to move on. Anything else relative to parking? Yes, sir.
Yeah, you got to understand that the county ordinances is highway patrol. The ordinances state that they are public streets. You can park anywhere, anybody, anytime on a public street. You cannot block someone's driveway. Each lot in this county is allotted 2 spaces for their driveway. You cannot park anywhere in that location, but it is perfectly legal you can put up cones or whatever and say you can't park in front of my house, but it is perfectly legal to park in front of your house. There is nothing you can do about it. You can call the sheriff. Sheriff will not do it. He will not issue a citation unless there is a sign there that says, according to the county ordinance, you cannot park in this space. I had that happen to my house. I had to actually get a sign, had the county ordinance, the sheriff's number on it, put it in front of my house, and I was able to get people away from that area. Other than that, if there's no sign there, anybody can park anywhere they want. They will not give a citation. They will not tow it.
Except for winter.
Except for winter, and there's a sign at the beginning of every single street that states there's no parking during winter operations.
There's a couple of legal things. I wish you'd go to there's a couple of legal things. Specificity overrides generalities.
I did know this on it.
Specificities in the law override generalities. So for example, when you have a vacation home rental ordinance that says that the overnight occupants, okay, cannot park anywhere but in front of the property or in the garage or in the driveway, that's the state of the law, okay? Because specificity always overrides generalities, okay? Now, the ordinance in its current state only addresses overnight. It doesn't address the issue of guests. So that becomes slightly separate.
Just for clarification, when does a guest become an overnight person? Is that midnight? Is it 1 in the morning? Is it 3 in the morning?
Maybe Jenny would find the definition of overnight occupancy if it's in the ordinance.
No, not, I think it's clear what an overnight person is. It's what is a guest and when must they vacate? And can you switch guests to overnighter?
And I want to remind you that one of the suggestions that have come out from other discussion groups is to get rid of the overnight and just have.
I know, but you haven't gotten rid of that, so I was looking for the definition as it currently stands.
Jenny, can you get that for me? Okay, so parking, any other parking? I want to be sure.
I just wanted to reiterate the importance of keeping vacation rental cars at the vacation rental, because we've had situations where they come from around the corner behind us, park in front of our house, cars full of food, they draw bears. and we got bears in the middle of the day climbing all over their cars, trying to get in and get at their food. Then they leave, and then the bears come, because it only takes bears one time to habituate. They come and they start climbing all over our cars.
I want to be sure I've got this right. What you're saying is that people leave food in the car overnight.
In the middle of
Or
the day,
anything that
in the
smells.
middle of the day, any
Chapstick
time of
will
the
do
day. Yeah, and we've had that, like the house behind us, they go around and they leave their car in front of our house all day and all night. But they go back and forth, and then we've had the same people come and do this several years in a row. And leave food in our cars, and because of where we live, we're sandwiched between two forested areas, the bears pass through. And so then they smell the food in the car, they're all over their car, they're gone on Sunday, Sunday night they're all over our cars. We don't have food in our cars, but now they're habituated that cars need food. So now they're climbing all over our cars, and so we're up all night chasing them away. So it's a real problem. You know, the bear, because the visitors don't understand the bear situation, and so we suffer repercussions.
Homeowners don't understand bears.
So I'll be honest, I don't know off the top of my head who handles the situation but it's a health and safety issue, obviously. So I'm going to ask them to be sure that that comment is on there, and we'll find out where it needs to go in the county.
One thing I might recommend, just as a recommendation on the solutions side.
I'm sorry, sir, but I'm really trying to stay organized, so if you would raise your hand.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, James Terry with the council. One thing we do, and I would recommend other people do, and again, like she said, most of the homeowners are a problem as much as the renters, but at least we have an opportunity when we're sending all of our communications to put some of that bear aware information in what we deliver to the owners when they sign off on their contract, that they're aware of that stuff. So I'm not sure who's managing that property by you, but that might be a recommendation you give to them. Because I live in a very area.
Yes, sir.
In my
We're talking
neighborhood,
about parking, right?
yes, in my neighborhood, I just wanted to point out that we've seen the shuttle system utilized to minimize the number of cars at the VHRs. So they go park off-site, and then they shuttle each other back up. So, and then they park in front of other people's houses, and they do the legal thing, they park in front of full-time residents, because that's not a VHR, so there's no problem with that. And I kind of suspect that the VHR owners are pointing that out to the renters, that if you've got too many cars, go park in front of the full-time resident, and then shuttle yourselves up there, and that's what's going on in my neighborhood.
Okay, now, when you say shuttle, they're shuttled within their
Hey.
cars, not a shuttle service.
No, their cars.
They're shuttling each other
Okay,
to
so,
minimize the number of cars and keep it
so
within the
they're
limit.
parking a block away or
Yeah.
numerous cars down the street.
Absolutely.
Houses down the street. And I just want to make sure that they get it in their notes.
Yeah.
So,
But that's absolutely what's going on. We've seen it numerous times.
right, and it hasn't been a one-time occasion, but numerous occasions. Have you reported it?
That's so untrackable. I mean, what, you're gonna have to film them, and it's just gonna be one of those things that falls through the cracks that's almost impossible to enforce. You're asking you're a nuisance to the sheriff's department for that kind of call. And that's not what I want to be as a full-time resident, it's a nuisance to the sheriff's department, but it is what's going on.
Okay, I think I saw another hand over here on parking. Yes, ma'am.
Mine was on the bear situation with the parking too. I think that even you mentioned about the new homeowners coming into Tahoe. Even to be able to educate the new homeowners on what goes on with these bears, it's not just the renters. I mean, I have new homeowners that live next to me that had no idea, put groceries in their car and destroyed. We just had another one, what do you say, $50,000 worth of car damage for hot tea. So it's not just renters. I mean, we need to really evaluate what it is that we all need to educate ourselves. Educate everybody in our community of what it is that happens, in our community with these bears.
Well, I think you're right, it's an educational.
The homeowners stay here and eventually they'll get educated. These vacation
Eventually they do.
And a weekend of education is not going to do it for them. And it's
You're
a
right,
different set of people
homeowners
every
too.
single time, so.
First of all, you I'm moving on, I'm sorry. You have to have a permit, okay? And we are told that there are some people who are renting but don't have a permit. So one of the things I wanted to encourage you is to report it, because you can't get them out of the system. If they're not violated 4 times within a 12-month period of time, then how do you get the bad actors out? So if you know about it, this is my comment, report it, okay? That's the process currently, and that's currently what we need to deal with. It doesn't mean that we can't have wonderful suggestions for the future, better suggestions, make a better world kind of thing. The permit must be posted. Yes, sir.
Just a question on that. So if somebody is renting that does not have a permit, and if you discover that they are renting, what recourse do you have with that homeowner?
Oh, we have lots of recourse. Yes, they need to have both. Our permit is both a business license and a permit. So we can take them to not a hearing officer, but court, and they can be charged $500 for not having the business license. So we have, yes, and we're pretty good at convincing those people we know about to get a permit. Once we find out, but the trouble is, if we don't know about it, you know, and I'm not clairvoyant. Yes,
Do you have to catch an unpermitted renter at the house? Because the city just changed theirs to where they could use advertising to target unpermitted VHRs.
Yeah,
Prior, they had to catch someone there.
Yeah, that's actually our board. I can't remember exactly when it was done.
The first vacation rental ordinance, I believe, was in 2004. It's been changed since then numerous times. But yes, ours requires a business permit and a vacation license at all times. If you don't have to be caught, you know, that's just, if you're running a business such as that, you have to have that license.
Yeah, and we're having, I'll confess this, having a great deal of difficulty with Airbnb. But you're from time to time that we do at least 15 websites where we search for unpermitted vacation home rentals. And then, of course, whenever there's a complaint, we follow up on it. Yes.
You said you're having problems with Airbnb?
Yeah.
What? Because I am an Airbnb renter.
Well, the new age, I'll take a moment or two if I can. The new age economy, the kinds of contracts that they want to have with a county or city, San Francisco has dealt with this issue, okay, it's pretty one-sided, and it's not what everybody else has to follow. So they want, it's unfair in terms of discrimination. So what they want is, we would collect the money from Airbnb, but they wouldn't tell us which rental it was from, or who it was from, or the address that it was from. So that's, and that's not a big secret. You know, every county in the state is dealing with the same, and San Francisco has had multi-million-dollar lawsuits relative to Airbnb. So, okay. Yes, ma'am.
If your permit is a business license, then how come you can have a business in a residential area?
I'm going to let them write that down. I deal with what is in the ordinance. It's a combination. Hot tubs, 10 p.m.
Too late.
I got one too late.
Multiple hot tubs on one property.
My goodness.
The person who went like that, I get it.
60 feet.
Multiple hot tubs.
Multiple hot tubs, 60 feet from my bedroom. And I am surrounded by 5 vacation rentals. I am saturated, and they are all within 60 feet of my property.
So it's not one vacation that has multiple
No,
ones?
one vacation rental has one in the front and one in the illegal deck in the back that's 50 feet really from my bedroom window. They have 2, and that's another thing. Before these are issued, I think that a building inspector needs to go to each property and make sure that all the decking and all the stuff that they've installed for guest amenities is legal, because This one deck that has this back hot tub, I believe the deck is illegal, but they also built a fire pit with a rock surround in the middle of the wooden deck. And one night I looked out my kitchen window and there were flames going up, and I didn't know that they had installed this. I almost called the fire department because I thought the house was on fire. And then I
Okay, so we have,
realized.
I want to be sure. Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah,
okay?
inspections before permitting.
So inspections before, that's a planning building issue. So the recommendation is inspections before allowing the vacation home rental. The issue of a fire pit in the middle of a deck, the multiple hot tubs. And that issue, and the suggestion, would also fall under the noise, because I know what one sounds like, but multiple ones might, the sheriff's department does own some measurement devices on these. And they tell me that they're excellent at measuring when there's a constant noise, like as in constant music. They're not very good if you're having laughter, for example. So that's the issue of the noise of laughter in a hot tub is something that they can measure with this, I'll call it a mechanical electronic
Decibel
device.
meter.
Yes.
Decibel meter.
Thank you. So the issue of inspection, the fire pit, the hot tubs, and there are multiple ones, okay? Did I miss an issue?
No, but I think it's imperative that these things, the building department inspect before the permit, because they're going out and creating guest amenities that may not be safe for the occupant or for me. And this is another way for the county's interested in revenue. This is another way to get revenue for the county.
Was there another one over here? Yes, sir.
I can research this and get information to your office, but in the vehicle code, there's a provision that says if it can be heard, if the music, or the noise, it's called music. If the sound from the sound system in the car can be heard 50 feet away, that is a violation of that item in the vehicle code. And I'll research that again and send it to your office. And I think that we can forget this sound measuring device. It's if you can hear it. In the vehicle code, it's in the vehicle code that if it can be heard 50 feet away, it should, of course, that's damaging the occupant's hearing. But, so you don't need a sound meter. You just need to hear it a certain distance away.
Well,
That is much smarter than trying to measure intermittent laughter.
Time of day in the county code makes a difference. There is in the county code, not in the vacation home rental ordinance, but within the county code, in its totality. They have different times of day and the decibels that are allowed at those very specific times of day. So in other words, noise at 2 o'clock in the afternoon has a higher decibel threshold, thank you, than 2 o'clock in the morning. So there are some in existence, but what I want to do is I want to make sure that we have the issue, and your solution is if you can hear it from the...
A certain number of feet away.
Okay, so...
Just point of information, the section that Sherry's referring to about the noise is chapter 9.16 of the county ordinance.
Oh, why?
The vehicle code is smarter than the county ordinance in this case.
Okay.
No time limits for the hot tub noise, and I say that because there are many people in our communities that work graveyard shifts because of the casinos and the tourist industry, etc. So, yeah, 10 o'clock is 10 o'clock. Doesn't mean it's in the morning or in the evening. It's still going to bother some people.
And the only thing in the vacation home rental ordinance that refers to 10 o'clock, Jenny can correct me if I'm wrong, is the hot tub.
Right.
Other kinds of noise, if they're outrageous, at 8:30 or 9:30, are still reportable. I mean, there is nothing magical about 10 o'clock.
Right,
but
I'm
there
talking about that,
happens
because this
to
is the hot tub topic, right? So,
Yes,
yeah, that's what I'm
yes.
talking about, is for hot tubs, no time limit.
No, but if they were being egregiously noisy and they were in the hot tub, I
Right.
guess that's what I'm trying to say. The fact that the hot tubs have to be turned off at 10 o'clock. Off.
Right, but it's still the noise issue.
Yes, I concur. Yes, sir.
I just want clarification, so that section you just noted, is that pointing out that there's different decibel levels for different times of the day?
Yes.
Permissible decibel levels?
Yes.
Okay.
That
not-
makes sense.
Yeah, but that's not what the sheriff has told me in the past. I'm a vacation home rental owner. We're permitted, we work with a highly reputable management company. Every single renter that comes in signs off and is advised of all of the requirements, the parking, the noise and everything. In our case, we have what I believe is a homeowner who is highly sensitive to noise. In fact, they've told me they were struck by lightning, and I believe that's a contributing factor. So in that case, we've had noise complaints at 8:30 in the evening, when it's people sitting out on the deck stargazing. We've had people playing pool in our garage and received noise complaints. So my concern is that this is a very subjective issue, and what might be loud to you is not loud to me. And in my case, we're now about to lose our permit. And so we've followed the rules, we're permitted, we pay the taxes. I'm hearing you say that, Airbnb, they're potentially not paying their taxes. And so for somebody like me that
No,
follows...
Airbnb is disputing that they're actually an operator.
But I was asking, the reason I was asking if somebody was not permitted, what the recourse was. We followed every single rule. We pay our taxes, I pay my property taxes, I pay the sales tax. We put in all the things in place. We have local contacts, we've gone to the neighbors, given them numbers. And yet, as a law-abiding owner, we're now being penalized when there are potentially owners that are not following those rules that are probably getting away with it. And it feels to me like some of those resources should maybe be focused on those folks rather than the people that follow the rules.
Well, I want you to know the county council is very focused on Airbnb. I want you to know that. But it took San Francisco, which is a really big place, has lots of attorneys, a long time to resolve that issue. So I'm not trying to make excuses, but...
But just for clarification, so there are different decibel levels for different times of the day?
Except unless it's 415 of the penal code, which is a state law that says any time of the day or night. There is no specification.
So which
And so if the sheriff's
one
department
applies
is
then? I
calling
don't know.
415 of the penal code, which holds a higher weight of discipline in it or enforcement in it, then no, there is no time.
What was the section again?
415 of the penal code, California State Penal Code.
So the California law supersedes the
But
county?
again, I usually start the meeting with a little spiel about, don't throw anything at me, okay? As the neighbors have a right to peace and repose.
Absolutely.
They have a right to peace and repose. There are property rights there's constitutional property rights relative to renting, okay? But all the parties have rights, and the neighborhood has a right to peace and repose. So we need, to think in those terms, and I appreciate, your comments about you try to do everything you can to work with your tenants to make sure that, I've even thought, I know this is crazy, and sometimes Sue thinks, I am a little crazy, of even having meters on the houses so that the property owners and the management companies and the local contact person can know when that noise starts up. I mean, I don't know if that's legal.
It is, yeah.
You have
Our company utilizes it.
So there's a...
No, it's a meter. It's a noise decibel meter within the home.
Yeah. So, all I'm saying is everybody has their rights, and I appreciate your comments, but I also appreciate everybody else's.
We're a management company, and we occasionally rent through Airbnb. They secure our renter for us, but we always pay the tax. So I don't understand what the problem. The owner is responsible for the tax, the TOT. And so I don't know why Airbnb even comes into it, except they're renting out rooms down in San Francisco. It isn't, they have very little impact up in Lake Tahoe area. The owner is responsible for paying the taxes if someone comes in and pays money for renting the property. If Airbnb collects it, you turn it over to the owner, and the owner has to pay the tax. So I don't understand what the problem is with Airbnb.
Well, number one, there's lots of violations. One is not filing the return. Okay, that's number one.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Number two is not paying the taxes, right?
Right.
Okay. And I think that there might be a movement in the county that says, okay, we want to be fair, so we want to work with Airbnb to make sure that every single person follows the law. It's just like the highway patrol, you know, they go out there and they don't catch every speeder, but they really try to make sure that the enforcement is out there. So, you know, that's kind of the concept, that we're not going to just let it flow. We're going to pursue Airbnb for all those who aren't like you, who possibly might be not paying their taxes or reporting as they're supposed to do, or have a permit like they're supposed to do. Yes, sir. You and then you.
Yeah, Airbnb states, when you ask them, because there's not a section where it says, put your tax number in here, they don't have that, so they just say, the amount needs to be in your rental rate, and then you have to pay it out of that. So that's the only issue with them, is that they're one of the only few websites that doesn't have a bracket to put your tax numbers in, so.
Well, there's also HomeAway, there's Vacation.
No, but they all have tax bracket. There's all, Airbnb's the only one that doesn't, but it's up to the homeowner or property manager to pay that, you know. And most everyone should know that rent's on there,
And
but.
for anybody who might be in the middle, who happens to have a vacation home rent, who's not doing it, the county is seriously considering hiring a company that goes out and searches, and has worked for other counties to search any unpermitted ones. I think they're serious, they're considering it. I think they're considering it. So, okay, we talked about hot tubs. Move on to the I'm sorry.
Could you help me understand what the difference is, the nuance between vacation home rental and Airbnb, and are Airbnbs required to be permitted?
Yes. Yes, anybody who has a transient occupancy situation is required to be permitted.
And are they required to be posted the same way that vacation home rentals are?
Yes, we would consider them a vacation home rental. It's less than 30 days.
What does that mean?
It's less than 30 days. It's transient. It's less than 30 days. That's the definition of what makes it a transient as opposed to a month-to-month rental.
Okay, thank you.
Big issue, noise. Who wants to go first? It's so huge. Yes, sir.
Okay, we've found that we don't think that renters are being cited for noise. Now, is that your responsibility or the sheriff's responsibility?
First of all, I have no authority to cite.
Okay.
Okay. The sheriff has the authority to cite, and I wish we had a representative in the room, and he could go through the reasons why he can cite. Okay. But I will bring it up. Fair? Okay. I do not have that. One of the suggestions that I think I read was citing not only the tenant, but the owners. I'm not saying this is my suggestion, I'm saying that that was one of the suggestions that has been brought to us that is expected to go to the board. Yes, sir?
When a mini hotel is being operated in a residential area, people really don't have to talk loud if there's 30 people in this structure. I mean, if you have 30 people talking at once, it's too loud. You don't have to yell when you have that amount of people.
That is where the suggestion of getting rid of overnight occupancy and maximum occupancy. You go to church, somebody get mad at me when I say this. You go to church, and as I walk in the door, it says maximum occupancy. It's just one of the suggestions that is coming forward. That's all. Noise.
Where do you start? All of us have noise issues.
I wanted to just bring up the point that probably more than half or 2/3 of the noise events from vacation rentals are unenforceable. They are instantaneous, people slamming doors and then going into the house, it's quiet. You can call the sheriffs will show up after the people are in the house, it's quiet, they can't do anything. So there's a bunch of different types of noise problems that are completely unenforceable. And that somehow...
Do you agree that occupancy is, the number in the house has something to do with the noise?
No, it's the kind of people that rent the house. You get great people sometimes, they're quiet, they're considerate. Other times you have people that are just there to party because these vacation rentals are advertised as a place for people to come and party at Tahoe. So the point I'm trying to make is there's so many different types of noise issues and nuisances that you can never get a sheriff there in time to report or to control because it can last for a half hour and the sheriff shows up 35 minutes later and it's quiet and it's done.
Do you have a suggestion?
I don't. That's why I'm putting it out here. I have 4 around my house, as you well know, and it can be, one can go off. I had one last weekend where they came back from the clubs at 4 a.m. exactly on the dot because I looked at the clock, all slammed their car doors, woke me up out of the middle of sleep, went in the house. The next night, exactly the same thing. So this is a real problem because it's unenforceable. There's no way to get a sheriff to go over there and catch them doing these sort of things. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I understand,
Yeah.
because one of our number one complaints is obviously noise. And
Yeah.
so...
So you can't get up in the middle of the night with a video camera and catch it because by the time you get your pants on and you're running out the door with a video camera to try to record it, they're in the house. And if you call the sheriff, the minute you hear it, the sheriff's going to show, if they're busy and it's a busy weekend, it's going to be hours later.
Yeah.
And they're going to show up like they have on my 4 vacation rentals. They're going to say, we don't see a problem here.
Which is the other issue.
This lady,
So-
I'm sorry, the woman in...
I think we need to put it in perspective. I have 5 grandchildren, ages 6 to 12. They come up and visit, and they run outside and they scream at the top of their lungs all day. But they do go to bed by 8:30 or 9. I can hear my neighbors in the summer. They're more than 50 feet away. They're having a conversation. Sound carries. So, I think that egregious noise is one thing, but I think we're getting a little nitpicky about the noise.
She hasn't said much.
I think one of the, and this kind of brings it all to a head, that these issues are incremental. And clubs and habitually waking you up. That becomes another increment of why you cannot tolerate this. For us, the vacation rental next door, it's the stairway going up to the home is right next to our living space. And so you have people arriving at 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, pounding up and down those stairs, yelling, did you get the beer? Have you got my coat? And all the rest of it. And that may go on for 20 minutes. No, it's not something you can call the sheriff about. But it becomes incremental. And then you have the whole issue of trespass on your property. People walking on your property, walking on your property to throw rocks in your fish pond, and then their children throwing rocks in your fish pond, or going behind your house where you have a sliding glass door and irritating your dog so the dog comes unhinged. So while you may be following the rules as a homeowner who's renting or a vacation rental agency who monitors, it's these things that happen day in, day out, that you perhaps can't quantify, you can't have enforcement on. But that's why people are just to the boiling point. It has gotten to the point, I didn't buy my home to live next door to a Motel 6. But that's what I'm saying.
What I want to know is what is your problem-solving suggestion?
Well, I've tried calling property rental associations, and what happens, and this is a clarification I'd like, I was told by one of the property managers, they may have 3 violations or citations. If they change property management companies, they get to start over.
No, that's not
Was
true.
that the policy 3 years ago?
No, it's never been a policy.
Okay, I've been told that.
He hasn't had a chance.
You talked about 4 complaints before anything is done to pull their permit, okay? In the old days, the dog got 1 bite. You remember those days? Seriously. The court said, no, that's no longer allowed. They get no bites, no bites, okay? Why do we give them 4? They should have 1 with a big fat fine, the second one they're gone. Why 4? That's never gonna happen. No. We have saddled you with
So
a...
he's saying 2.
Wait a second, let me finish.
I'm trying to make sure that they get it. So he's saying
The numbers we can debate
2
later.
and they're out. Or if 1 was big enough, they're out. Is that what you're saying?
No. 2 big enough. 1, they can just have a big fine. Second one, they lose their permit. What you've been saddled with is a set of rules and regulations that are extremely difficult to enforce. The enforcement people don't want to enforce them, so nothing's going to change. We've been simmering here for 20 years. 20 years, some people longer. It's boiled over. The city's now going to get a measure to ban them. It could happen in the county. I don't know how the vote would go in the county if it could just be limited to Sue's district. But it's the same thing's going to happen here. The people are fed up to here, maybe here.
Oh, we have vacation home rentals in other parts of the county, don't we?
But not in the concentration you do here. Because we're a vacation area.
That's true.
Like Palm Springs,
Yeah.
like Santa Barbara, okay, Monterey. And they're all instituting laws and banning them. We don't really...
So he's saying, I just want to make sure that our people have it on the record. He's saying, big fine, 2 and they're out. I just want to be sure that it's in, because my responsibility is to bring all comments, all suggestions, okay?
He's a city resident, by the way, he doesn't live in the county, so.
Yeah.
I'm going to go all in here, and I apologize to those who have a business with a vacation rental, but I live in a residential neighborhood, and the people who be in my residential neighborhood should be the residents. And we should not have a lot of strangers infinitely trespassing in our residential neighborhood. Shut them all down.
So I want to make sure that our people have exactly what you said. You want a ban on all vacation home rentals, not just a temporary moratorium, but a ban.
That's true. It's a
all
residential
in the future.
neighborhood and it's a place for residents, not transients.
Okay. I just want to be sure that they can.
I just wanted to state
get
the
it,
extreme position here.
I've had one or two in my life. Yes, sir, and then you, okay?
I'd like to state I don't like yellow houses and I want to ban all yellow houses. I mean, how extreme can you go? It's my turn, sir.
Go ahead.
So I hear all those complaints. I absolutely agree there's noise problems, but I would say that residents have probably create some of those same noises. The noise complaints, the walking up steps, the opening of doors, I guarantee those are residents as well as renters, both.
Never had it.
Guarantee, absolutely guarantee. The second thing, I'd be really curious to know what kind of revenue do vacation home rentals contribute to the county and locally, both from sales tax to, I mean, is there a study? Just, because I'm curious what context that brings
I can tell you our
It's
company.
transient occupancy tax, just a second. It's transient occupancy tax, as
Right.
you know, it's a 10% on gross,
Right.
okay? And I can't separate for you off the top of my head vacation home rentals from,
Long-term?
no, hotels
Hotels?
and motels.
Oh.
But altogether, it's something in the neighborhood of 3.6 to 3.8 million.
And then what percent might that be of the operating budget, ballpark?
Minuscule.
Okay. But you just
what
mentioned
value are you
hotels.
putting on
So
my peace and
I'd be
quiet?
curious to know if
Yeah.
hotels have a noisy guest, does the hotel get the fine or does the guest get the fine?
Hotels
if
are
it-
appropriately zoned.
Can we ask her to answer?
If a hotel has a noisy guest,
Right.
the hotel management
They have
will
on-site
either,
managers.
either take care of it themselves
Right.
or call the sheriff.
No.
But are there, does the hotel potentially lose its right to rent the rooms? Is there a licensing that they can potentially lose the ability to rent the rooms.
I've never seen that happen.
The
It doesn't
block
mean it doesn't
did,
happen,
and
but
the
I've
Okay.
never seen that.
So I have a vacation rental permit, which you're saying is the same as a hotel, but I have,
I didn't say it was the same.
Be an on-site manager
the
to solve the
rental
problem.
revenue it seems to be bucketed together, so we seem to be categorized the same.
With two different ordinances,
Yeah,
it's a
well-
very specific vacation home rental ordinance. There was a gentleman over here, I promise you that.
Reduce that 1 year time allotment to like a month or 3 months.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I don't
For
understand.
complaints, they get 4 complaints in a year or something.
Oh, that's
Well,
right.
actually, the
Two
proposal,
complaints
one
for
of the
3
ones that I
months.
explained,
A year is too
actually
long.
gives them fewer complaints within an 18-month period.
No, that,
Fewer.
other direction here. other
So
direction.
it actually moves them out
Two
more like.
complaints per month or per 3 months.
Oh,
A
no,
year
no,
is
no,
too
no,
long.
it's a 12 months currently. It's a
He's making the
12
recommendations.
rolling.
Change it,
Change it to,
2 complaints for a shorter time.
now you're using the word complaint, you're not using violations.
Violation, whatever.
I just want to make sure I understand. You had.
So real quick, it wasn't a comment, somebody was asking about just dollars, and to put it in kind of perspective, just without, if you take out TOT alone, VHRs, and I'm not the perfect expert, there's somebody who knows the numbers even better than I do in here, but represents, basically, if you took that away, it's the operating budget for the fire department. So that's wait, let me finish. That's just TOT sales tax and operating. Our owners alone with collateral spending, our company alone, with the surveys that we did last year, collateral spending above that, which is putting money into all the businesses that work here, was $16 million in collateral spending. That's above TOT, that's above property tax. That's your jobs, that's the casinos, that's the little restaurants, that's the bus boys, that's all those jobs go away. So, I mean, just to put it in perspective.
Those jobs are going away
Okay,
anyway.
we're supposed to
People
be
can't afford
talking
to live
about
here.
noise now. Noise. So the subject we're on right now is noise. I think it's your turn.
What value are you putting on my peace and quiet?
I live in the neighborhood too. I have 4 VHRs right around me. I make friends with them. I mean, I moved to Tahoe because it's a tourist community. I like living here because it's a tourist community.
How do you make a living here?
In the tourist community.
Thank you.
That's why I moved here.
Okay.
At the last meeting I spoke to, because I understand the validity of the vacation rentals and what it brings to our community as far as finances, and, you know, the beauty of Tahoe is to be shared. And I recommended, and I want to say it again at this meeting because I want to make sure you get it in your notes, especially for the larger properties, a minimum day stay. Because that would help cut down on the comings and goings every single weekend. It would help cut down on the mass exodus that traps them in our neighborhoods on Sundays, especially in the larger properties where you've got 15 people. They're not going to be at the casinos coming home at 2 a.m. every morning for 5 nights in a row. But you've got 15 people coming in for 2 nights, they're going to do it, followed by 15 people coming in for 2 nights, they're going to do it. It's just cumulative. If you had a minimum day requirement, especially for the larger properties, then maybe the people who would rent these larger properties would come and enjoy the beauty and quiet of where we live and not be as disruptive to our neighborhoods.
So I just want to paraphrase. So we have month to month, and what you're saying is a minimum requirement of 1 week.
And then, well, not
So it'll be
necessarily
week to week.
Could
as
be
opposed
whatever
to
was determined to be the appropriate number of days, whatever was determined to be appropriate. Just not coming in Friday night and leaving Sunday, because that's in my neighborhood where we experience the disruptions. They come in Friday night, you got 4 car loads coming in, midnight, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and the whole rigmarole that the other person described. And you have this every weekend, where if you have a minimum night stay, a 4 night, a 5 night, a 6 night, at least these people do this on 1 night, and then we have peace and quiet for a number of nights following, would be the hope. Usually the weekend warriors...
Why would you have just peace and quiet for a number?
Well, because the weekend warriors come and they party and they carry on, and then they get tired.
Right, the longer they stay, the more apt they are to be friendlier, to be more
Right.
family oriented, etc. cetera.
Right.
That is interesting.
This is my experience in my neighborhood for vacation rentals.
You need to stay up here for a year.
With
With
vacation rental.
With a vacation rental, yes.
This gentleman, I think, had his hand up the longest, and then you, sir, I think you might, are you?
I'm waiting.
Oh, you're waiting.
If I was to rent a car and speed in that vehicle and get pulled over by the police, I would receive the citation for speeding, not the owner of that vehicle. So again, my recommendation would be to cite the guests and not the owner, right? So I wanted to share that analogy, but I also had a question, and it is noise related. Can more than one violation be imposed on one visit?
Yes.
So noise citation, vehicle, and rental permit can all be considered 3 citations on one visit.
They're each separate.
Now, can that citation be added at a later date for the rental permit? I have a permit that's on display. We had a single call on June 23rd. I received 3 citations. I have my rental permit on display, but how could it be that I got a rental citation until after somebody left and did some research to find if there was an ad somewhere, which I don't place any ads, nor does my management company. How could I get a license citation on that single visit when my permit's on display?
Well, if your permit was outdated.
It's not. It has never been. It's on display.
Incorrect.
It sounds to me like research is being done to compile and be added to that. So in my case, I've got 3 citations on one visit.
Well, I can tell you what normally occurs, okay? Somebody complains about something, and then we do an investigation. And of course, we are going to do an investigation of all the attributes of that.
I understand that.
And I'm going to just exaggerate for a second. If the people were perfectly silent, no noise was heard from outside of the house, they didn't have any issues whatsoever, we wouldn't have heard about it to begin with, usually. So something usually happens that causes us, we get a sheriff's report, we get some kind of notification that there is something.
So you go and research to see if there's other violations on that house?
Well, sure.
But, I mean, if somebody, so if I had a search warrant, and that just seems like an incredible imposition on the homeowner, right? So now, we had a noise complaint. Let's go see if they have, I have a license. It's on file. It is not. I don't place any ads anywhere. And so now you're trying to compile that? I mean, that sounds like you're trying to remove my license. That's 3. And earlier today, you mentioned that you contact all parties. I have never once been contacted by anybody on any noise complaint or anything against my home. Not once. So why is that the case? It was all parties. Management company and ownership. I have never been contacted by anybody from your office. I get a letter that says these complaints were filed, but it's 2 months after the fact. Where's the answers? I'm not hearing answers.
Well, either are we.
The timing may be too long for you, but sometimes the process takes a while.
And that's what we've been doing.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a comment about noise and a question.
Yes.
I built a home in South Lake Tahoe in the unincorporated area 4.5 years ago. In that 4.5 year period, I have now 5 VRBOs across the street from me. So I have 1 conservancy lot, which protects my view, and 5 rental properties. I've had a lot of problems with one in particular. A couple of these homes are quite large. They sleep a lot of people. So the situations that you all are describing, people arriving, 1 car arrives at midnight, 1 car arrives at 2, the click of the lock, let's not do it once, let's do it 6 times to be sure it's locked. Anyway, there was a group that came in and I contacted the management company early. It was 4 in the afternoon and I knew we were going to have a long night. they called the people, or even maybe did a courtesy visit. And I believe one of the renters said, "Oh, I'm Reno PD, I totally get it, no problem." I want to speak to what you shared. So they made us pay for that complaint. And again, it's things that happen that you can't, call a sheriff and say,
Unenforceable.
yeah, it's unenforceable. So someone arrived at 2. I'm going to give you an example of what they did.
I want to hear about, they made us pay for that.
By being extra noisy.
By being extra obnoxious. For instance, someone arrives on a motorcycle at 1 in the morning. Everyone in the rental came out and he stood in the driveway and revved the engine on his motorcycle for 5 or 10 minutes, then they all went back inside. There is no way the sheriff is going to, it was like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. This is what I'm finding in my neighborhood. And so my question is this, I understand you're not a planner, but I'm a homeowner. I built my dream home in a very quiet, beautiful neighborhood. I don't want to stay there because my summers are awful because I have these big, big homes that, 4 carloads of people pile into and party as hard as they can and leave their garbage and their noise and their behavior, and they don't care about me as a neighbor.
So let's get to the bottom line, okay?
So my question is, what meeting do I need to go to where I can have some effect on the fact that I have 5 vacation rentals across the street?
I hear what you're saying about the 5 vacations. I understand what you're saying regarding the noise and the inconvenience, and you came up here for the peace and repose. I totally get it, okay? But what I'm asking is, bottom line, what would you like changed in the ordinance? Do you want there not to be clusters?
Yes.
Yes. I have to know what your recommendation is in order to forward that.
Yeah, I understand. So that is my question. That is my request. And then my question is, because one of the first things you said after we went over this packet is, I'm not a planner. I can't speak to the cluster homes.
Right.
But I feel like as a property owner, I have a right to be here and realize that there's a lot of people in my situation who are disgruntled and disappointed and everything else. I want to know, where is the meeting for a solution to my problem?
Well, I can let Sue address it if you'd like, but my understanding is that right after the first of the year, this ad hoc committee is going to have some very public meetings. Is that correct?
Yeah, as I stated before, we're going to be starting the process of studying. As everyone's asked, I know this doesn't happen in Santa Barbara. There's a lot of different areas, a lot of different places that are dealing with it differently. And what I want to do is make sure the way we deal with it is the right way to deal with it. And Palm Desert, just last week, I saw what they did. And that's where I'm saying we're keeping all those options open, and we're going to have that discussion, and we're going to have it in public. I'm going to have the sheriff there. We're going to have county council there. We're going to have planners, everybody, and Sherry, everybody in the room discussing what we can do and how we get there. So that's what I want to do. And Sherry, bless her soul, she's up here, but it's one part of the issue. She's got one part of that issue. As a VHR ad hoc to the Board of Supervisors, I'm telling you, we're going to deal with the entire area.
Do you anticipate there being any way to reverse having 5 vacation rentals across the street from me? Or do I need to move?
There's going to be that possibility of, just like what Palm Desert just did this week. They put a ban, no grandfathering in, a ban, but it's not taking effect for 18 months. That's the most drastic I've heard yet of anybody putting any ban.
So it's an R1 ban.
Excuse me. 1 and 2, which means that if you're in a different area, if you're not in the residential 1 or 2, then it's not a complete ban. Thank you for that correction. So, yeah, but we need to just, before we just start taking that issue right there and making it an ordinance, we want to talk to our legal counsel, talk to our sheriffs, make sure from Sherry, everybody is understanding what those rules are gonna be, and we will apply them. So yes, we are gonna be having, we're gonna be in public, they're gonna be up here sometimes, and Apple Hill's having the same problem down there, so.
I moved here from Apple Hill.
Okay, there you go. So the other, we can't have more than three, we can't have more than 2 supervisors in this discussion, so it's an ad hoc committee, so we can take back recommendations. So that will be happening. It's Michael Rinaldi from District 4, who's Apple Hill and all that. He and I are on this. We just got done with cannabis. Trust me, we know how to take issues, lock them down, and then get to a consensus. Won't make everybody happy possibly, but it's telling you we want to try to get there to a level where everybody's respectful of everybody else's rights.
Well, I just have a little comment. You know, democracy is messy. It's not, you know, dictatorships are streamlined. Things happen in a hurry in a dictatorship. So I want to congratulate you and like I said, thank you for participating in the democratic process. And it's probably whatever side of an issue you're on, it's not going to be fast enough, but it is a process where everybody gets to participate, they get to have their say, and it's a lot better than that dictator. I recently came back from Russia. And I want to assure you it's better than Russia.
I have an additional question.
Yeah.
If there's any realtors in the room, I feel like this is a disclosure issue. Do you know when I sold my home in Apple Hill, I had to disclose. Guess what? You can't get out of your driveway on a Saturday in October, November, and December.
What exactly did you have to disclose?
I had to disclose that my home is in a part of Apple Hill. There will be traffic, there will be all kinds of issues, and that traffic also is an issue for public safety, because those roads get so backed up, fire department, rescue, all of that becomes, access becomes a problem. So my question is, if I were to sell my home, do I have to disclose that there are 5 vacation rentals
By law.
across the street?
Yes, you do.
See, this is affecting my property value.
I didn't answer that question because I don't know.
You do.
You do, yeah.
Okay, over here. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we're still talking about noise, right?
We're still talking about noise, yes.
Noise, yes. So, we live in a very technological age.
Yes.
Shouldn't there be some sort of technology that we can use that can record and report these transient events?
Was this 1984?
It's a significant problem, I'm sorry, man.
There are
Come on.
Sharon, answer
No.
that.
This
1984.
gentleman has the answer to that.
The city has a program now and a website set up where you can go on at any time and search by property address to see what citations were written and whether or not they were successful in writing a citation or whether it was just a visit. We need something like that for both sides of this issue with the county, so that if we have a vacation, you have a vacation rental next to you that's a nuisance, you want to be able to go onto that site by the property address and see if in fact either your department or the sheriff's actually put a citation against that property. And I think that's a great idea for everybody to see what's going on and whether or not the report that you made and you insisted the sheriff's make an incident number or a report on it, you can see that they actually did that. So can we have that in the county? That would be a great idea.
We need more transparency.
I have to tell you that currently we're doing, poor Sue has heard this issue before.
No, I appreciate it. I don't.
We have our bookkeeping system for vacation home rentals and TOTs on an Excel spreadsheet. So, and we have asked for a case management system or a vacation home rental, TOT accounting system. And we think that if you had a business, okay, and it isn't a business for the county, but you have a revenue stream of over $3 million, you'd have a good system that goes with it. So can you kind of tell from my response that I'm pro?
The city system is up and running and it works. It's a beautiful thing.
They also get 17 million, I think, in TOT, quite a bit more than ours, right? Right? If I remember correctly? You were next, you just talked, so you're next.
Well, I mean, if $3 million is being generated through this activity, you know.
Then it's not all vacation rentals.
I understand some of it's motels, but, okay, let's say it's 2 million, all right? The TOT that's generated in the city stays in the city, and the city residents get some benefit from it. 2 things. We are putting up with all this in our residential neighborhoods, and the money is going to Placerville. It doesn't stay here to benefit us, to buy new snow removal equipment that benefits us, to do any of the things that, you know, might be a benefit to us as residents.
I want to be sure that the statement is recorded, but I don't want to say that you're correct because I'm not sure you're correct.
Sure.
Well,
Do you want to understand the budget?
Well, can I finish my point, please? If you're going to be in the business of this, then take some of the money and improve the computer system that you're dealing with so that you can be more efficient.
Oh, thank you.
More effective in addressing the issues that come up. I'm just saying, if the county's going to be in this whole business, then get the proper tools to do it right. I mean, an Excel spreadsheet is laughable.
Thank you. You know what I'll just say is I agree. Thank you.
That's ridiculous.
And we're getting where we have something.
Their payroll is still DOS-based.
So,
Okay, I think this gentleman had a question, and then
This is to piggyback on that, though.
Oh,
Can I-
yes, ma'am.
So the city had a presentation by a software company out of the Bay Area or Silicon Valley called Post Compliance. And there may be other solutions out there. I believe Placer County may be using it, but there are 30 cities in California that are using it. And it's a very robust system that could do all of what you're talking about, and it could really help you. I think you would love it. I think the
Are
city.
you Post Compliant?
No, I'm not, but I'm definitely sold by it. But there are different options that you can contract for, and one of the things we're advocating for in the city is for them to pursue, they have a call center too, that's not the sheriff or the police, it's a separate call center. They handle all of the cities that have signed up for it, and they talk to the complainant, they gather information, they call whoever they're told to call, whether it's sheriff and homeowner and property manager, or however you set it up. They will do a return phone call to the resident. If there's no response within an appropriate time or it's not corrected, then there's a fine. However you set it up with your rules, or they're saying that's a possibility.
But why don't we talk about it afterwards? Okay.
But as far as the accounting and everything else and the record keeping, it's something that would, the way they sold it, pay for itself, because it goes after by scraping the internet sites that advertise them and finding
we are
the
familiar
deals.
with them. We recommended them in the past. There's 3 companies that we're aware of that we asked for the money. Unfortunately, we didn't get it. You're next. No. And then we're going to need to get through a couple of other issues, the 1 hour content issue.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay.
There's no doubt this issue is complex, and if I heard this communication clearly, you have admitted here that your resources are lacking to support the oversight of this issue. That's what I'm hearing. We don't have the right computers, we don't have the right resources to enforce with respect to the amount of sheriffs to be called on these matters. It's apparent.
I'm not admitting to all those things, but you're welcome to.
This is what I heard.
What you
Okay, well, you admitted that you're working on an Excel spreadsheet and you're begging for help on
admitting
that.
that.
Okay. With that being said, it sounds to me like the resources are not supporting this vacation home rental issue. And my point is that if you can't support with the resources the issue as it stands today, then why are we allowing more permits to be pushed through?
So your solution.
I'm demanding.
Moratorium.
A moratorium.
So
Demanding.
Absolutely.
Yes. You already handle the matter in its current state. The Board of Supervisors can't handle the matter in its current state. There's a lack of supervision, and I am demanding a moratorium to mirror what just happened in the city.
Agreed.
So,
Excellent.
I just want to be sure that your problem-solving solution is a moratorium.
Absolutely.
And I want to ask you just real quick questions. Are you talking about a ban all future permits?
I am talking about stopping the permit process today, going forward. So until you can wrap your arms around it and get the resources underneath you to support, enforce, and regulate this matter, then you can determine whether it's a permanent or not. But for now, it needs to be stopped because you can't manage a problem when it's this big. Why allow it to continue to grow?
No, I'm not arguing with you at all. I just want to be sure that I'm understanding exactly what you're saying.
Absolutely.
If it went to the vote of the county residents, it would pass 90%, 95.
This gentleman.
Yeah, I want to provide a solution. This lady here had a problem with these Reno cops that rented next door that were punishing her. She has an ability, I believe, to swear out a citation or a contempt or have the sheriff come and make a citizen's complaint against those people. And the vacation rental ordinance has been around for 13 years. I was here when they formed it. It's never been totally enforced. People are unhappy with it, but a citizen still has some rights. And I think that people that are having really serious problems ought to take it in their own hands. And instead of having the sheriff come up and he says, well, I don't see any noise. And he said, well, they were out here revving their motorcycle. And he said, will you swear to that? I will, and I'll appear in court. She could probably get her justice. But if you're asking the sheriff to be a witness to something, it ain't gonna happen.
We're not gonna be your law enforcement for your vacation rental.
Well,
And there's nothing that she said that is technically
One more
illegal,
comment
and she
regarding
can't
the
prove her
noise issue, and then we're going to move on to some new issues, okay? So, we do need to wrap it up. The noise issue, Ken, were you the person who spoke?
There's other people that do this.
Okay, so the next issue is trash.
May I speak to that?
Yes.
Right next, immediately adjacent to my house is a vacation rental. Now, before it was a vacation rental, we had a beautiful relationship with the long-term renters. I mean, our dogs were very friendly with each other. It was wonderful. Then it became a vacation rental. And when we were out of town, we came back and our bear box was full of unbundled trash, just garbage in it. And it's on our property. But these vacation renters saw, oh, there's a place to put our garbage. And you know that they were just there, Friday through Sunday. And I can tell you when trash gets picked up, it's Friday in where I live. So that you can see my problem. So it's clear to me that whether there's a moratorium or a going forth no more, whatever happens, there must be a bear box on every vacation rental. Without exception, there can be no exceptions. There must be a bear box, and the people who are signing, the renters, these short-term renters, the management company must make sure to tell them, you must put all garbage in the bear box, in a bag. Don't just throw it in. Don't just throw it in the bear box.
Bear box instructions, because they don't. Sherry, can I add something really quick?
Yeah, sure, okay.
I'm proposing, we have a solid waste JPA, that's a Joint Powers Authority in South Lake Tahoe, and I've put on our next agenda that we're going to ask the JPA. It's been my request that we require every vacation owner to have a bear box, not the bear resistant can, but bear box. And we can do so within the in the Tahoe Basin where our JPA is located, which would be our unincorporated area also. Just want to throw that out there. That's going to be a request because I agree, Dr. Lim, that's something we have to take care of. We'll throw that out.
That's a step in the right direction, thank you. two issues that I've experienced is the vacation rental next door to me, they have a bear box, but the people were not educated enough to put the trash in it. They just stack it to the side.
Yep.
But the most recent issue that I've had, and this was very disturbing to me, I have a vacation, I have them all around me, but one behind me, it's a two-story with a deck that overlooks my backyard. And these people had their big parties and everything else, and they left all the trash on the deck. Okay, well.
Was that recent?
It was pretty recent, and I did call, but I came out and there were ravens that were just hawking and hawking and hawking, and they were making all kinds of noise. They were circling and going down and picking up the trash and eating it and depositing it all over the neighborhood. And so I called the sheriff and I called Clean Tahoe, and the sheriff was very nice, and I used to do code enforcement, so I know how difficult it can be. But they told me that if you can't see it from my property, then they can't do anything about it. Well, I could see it when the birds picked it up and carried it around, but if you're standing on my deck, you can't see the trash. Now, I actually walked over there and trespassed and took pictures of it, but they can't use that as evidence because you have to have a right of entry to do certain enforcement activities. So that needs to be clarified with Clean Tahoe and the sheriff and everything else, because I did complain, and I said, this is one thing I'm not going to put up with. The bears are attracted into the neighborhood then. They're going to crawl all over everything, and then they're going to be coming back looking for more food. And then we are adversely impacted. Our safety is impacted. So
Then they start breaking into our residence.
yeah, they break into our homes.
It
and
hurts
that's,
the bears
you know,
and
that's
the
a big deal.
raccoons.
I think that's a violation.
Well, that's not what I was told.
But anyway, I want to be sure that they got it. Any questions, guys? Louise? Any? Yes, sir.
I'm going to propose that if you impose a moratorium, you're going to have more issues, more noise. And here's why. If you decrease the number of homes or limit them right now to what the number is, that's not going to decrease the number of people that want to come here and rent. What will happen is those homes will get rented more often, and the people in this room that are having issues will continue to have issues. So if you put a moratorium on there, you're going to limit the number of additional homes, which could potentially spread some of these renters out. I do not think that's a good idea.
I don't want three more in my neighborhood.
My theory is that you will take you will not see a decrease. You will not see a decrease in the number of people coming up here. They will go to the same houses. I guarantee you. My home is not rented every weekend. I would welcome it to be rented every weekend.
What you're saying is, don't do that, but what's your solution? What is your recommendation? You're talking about something not to do.
You need to impose the fines on the renters. And that will decrease it. Because if you have repeat visitors and they knew they got fined for whatever the violation was, that will help.
They're not repeat visitors, though.
They absolutely are.
The gentleman in the back is the floor. The gentleman in the back has the floor.
I think we're chasing the tail of this dog, and we need to address the head of it. Everyone in here is very upset with the trash, the noise, the parking. We need to take care of the behavior of the guest. Your county good neighbor policy is a good idea. However, when people drive under the influence or they speed, they know the consequences of it. I feel the county needs to have a contract, and it could be called something like a guest passport. Dear such and such renter, welcome to South Lake Tahoe. Just a reminder, you're staying next to families at work, and we have families all around you. If you want to have a good party, go downtown. Here's the rules we expect from you. Take all these ideas, put them in that contract. The guest will initial it. The guest will then be instructed to bring it to the property. If the sheriff goes up and they don't have that contract, that owner should pay $1,000 or $500 or whatever it is. And if that guest who signed that contract is in the property, He's the one that gets cited. So if we could change the attitude of the guest here, I don't think we'll be here. We're all here because of issues. Let's take care of the issues.
So what you're saying is in addition to the contract that is required under the ordinance with the management company or the owner or the agent, right?
Right.
That in addition to that, there be some type of agreement between the county and the renter
Correct.
that he must have in his possession at all times.
Right.
Okay, that he or she has signed.
Correct.
Okay, and that if the sheriff goes out for any reason.
He asks for the person, where's your contract? If that person has the contract, I'm sorry, you violated such and such, and that, he has to pay for it. And if that tenant does not have that contract, the owner could pay for it. We will change the behavior of our guests. They need to know that it's a zero tolerance community.
So I
If the property managers in here,
I
well,
have a second to
it'd
that.
be better for the property managers in here. It'd be better for you and Sue and all the residences. Let's change the behavior of the tenant. Your good neighbor policy, Sherry, was a great idea. It doesn't have any teeth. We need a contract from the county that private owners from San Francisco must give to their tenant and all property
Like
managers.
attach it to their online regular contract.
Well, we need it to have them sign it and initial it everywhere. That's just a suggestion.
No, I just want to be sure that the people who are taking notes have it in their, I want everyone's suggestions to be brought forward. Yes, sir.
I'm vehemently agreeing with Teresa's idea that we need a moratorium right now to stop this thing so that we can incorporate ideas of that nature and all the other ideas that we have and revamp the ordinance completely to have a whole bunch of teeth in it and really good enforcement and really good permitting process so the permits aren't just handed out like candy. We need to stop this thing right now with a moratorium until we can do that.
Yes. I just wanted to share moratorium.
That's correct.
So,
No new
and I'd like
permits
to
issued.
define that. I'd like to define that because there are existing vacation home rentals and then a moratorium usually means a stop in something. So I want to define what you want, okay? And what you're saying is no newly permitted vacation home rentals. What about the old?
Well, we're going to work on that with a revamped ordinance. And then all the vacation rentals that are existing are going to be subject to this new ordinance and its regulations.
Sure.
So I'll be right with you. I just want to make sure that it's defined because.
That wasn't clear enough?
No, it was clear. But I want to make sure because the same words mean different things to other people.
Thank you.
Yes.
A week ago Tuesday, the city council on a 4-0 vote, because Tom Davis has to recuse himself, voted for a 45-day moratorium.
Right.
This moratorium applies to anything in the process of being permitted to be a VHR, whether they paid $1,000 to the city already to start the process of $1,500, makes no difference. Everything is stop cold on any new VHRs and stop cold on any processing of anything in the pipe stream now.
I get it. That's.
And that's only 45 days. Should have been.
I have a valid point of this.
This lady, she wasn't there.
I totally agree, the comments that Stella made about it's, a short-term, I'm not talking about a short-term moratorium, but a long-term moratorium, I think would just push people under the radar. And we don't have a system set up to really monitor people who are going with that permit. And we can't enforce things when people don't have a permit. So I'm not in favor of a moratorium. But I think we can be much better proactive. For instance, when these, I think right now, I think the statement about getting a permit is like handing out candy. I don't think there's any process really we go through. Do we identify that maybe a certain house, a certain lot, a certain location isn't appropriate for a vacation rental, whether it's too small, too close to a neighbor, for various reasons. And we
So,
can...
because I want to make sure of what you're saying. So what you're saying is planning should take a look.
Better
buildings,
evaluate.
And evaluate.
Better evaluate the property prior to handing out a permit with the inspection process, absolutely, and with other factors. For instance, if you've got somebody's bedroom right next to where their hot tub sits, maybe that's inappropriate to have a hot tub there for vacation rental. Maybe no hot tub is allowed in that property for that reason. There are certain factors, or maybe that hot tub can be enclosed, or there are other things that we can do to facilitate this to make it more good for our community or work better in our community. So we can evaluate it on the front end instead of the back end.
So gentlemen, near the whiteboard.
It's like we're trying to reinvent the zoning ordinance.
Thank you.
Zoning was invented to keep commercial businesses out of where we're trying to sleep.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
that's what she's getting at. We should look at this. They're handing these out without even asking the neighbors. If you want to have a daycare, it's a conditional use permit. Where the neighbors get input. These are hotels. I have one
So
10
let me
feet away from my
rephrase.
property line.
Go ahead. Let me rephrase. What you're saying is before a permit should be issued, your recommendation would be that the neighbors be advised or allowed to somehow or another.
I'm saying at the very least, really.
At the very least. Okay.
Really,
Or-
what you're looking at is the definition of an R1 neighborhood is no commercial business and no rentals under 30 days.
That's absolutely correct.
So what I'm saying is we're kind of nibbling around the edges. The real solution is get them out of R1 neighborhoods.
Yeah, so the special use permit would be the minimum of a requirement. Is that
Yes.
what you're saying?
Yeah. We don't get, if the one that just went in next to me, I didn't get a say in it. I got a postcard 30 days after it started.
Okay. And then the other issue is your real preference would be to ban them altogether? Is that
In R1 neighborhoods,
in
absolutely.
R1 neighborhoods? I just want to make sure
That's
that
what
we're
zoning was
totally
invented for.
understanding what you're saying.
That's
Okay?
correct.
Okay. All right, so we're going to have to wind this up.
Well, he's had more terms than I've had, and I have a valid point to bring up that piggybacks on this woman's concern. She was told, paraphrasing, that photographic evidence didn't work. I am an amateur photographer. I had got 40,000 pictures on my computer. I took a picture showing the street, the house number, and the garbage in the driveway of vacation renters who had taken off. They're gone. And it's going to stay there till the STR comes around, maybe. And I was told, and I made a copy and took it into the county office, and they said, no, we have to see it ourselves. I said, oh, wait a minute, you think I staged this? You think I faked that trash?
Which county office?
When it was in the building next to the DMV. Environmental management. Yeah, they said, oh, we have to see it, and we don't have time to go out and look at it. So they wouldn't take, I photographed in one frame the house number and the garbage strewn all over by animals, and but they wouldn't take it. So one change ought to be that the residents be allowed to present photographic evidence of trash not properly taken care of.
To environmental management.
To environmental management. Or to whomever it is appropriate, but environmental management would be one of them. Or, yeah, it ought to be allowed. What they're saying, by not accepting it, they're saying, this can't be true. You have a photograph. How do I know that, you didn't Photoshop it? Well, that's baloney. Why? I could sign under penalty of perjury, that this declaration is true, to my direct personal knowledge. And there were two vacation rentals. I live on a street of 42 lots, only 19 of them are occupied regularly. Lots of vacation rentals. It's a nice area. It ought to be that the complainant could sign under penalty of perjury, which is a criminal offense, that this photograph is what I observed, and sign the back of the photo, anything you want. But to just reject it is a slap in the face.
Well, I do want to remind you that trash left out on the back porch, not in the bear-resistant container, strewn across property is a violation, so you can report it to our office too.
Well, then I
As a
will.
violation to the vacation home rental. Now, I gotta move along a little bit. The women, we do.
I do agree with what Crystal said about we have 3 or 4
agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
But the people that rent the houses, I know one of the owners, he had wonderful rules, you know, in his VRBO thing. But the people don't abide by them, so it's not really his fault. It's the people that are renting it. They're the ones that should be fined.
Absolutely.
So we have another vote for fine the tenant.
Absolutely.
Fine everybody.
Ban everybody coming back, find everybody.
No, I'm just.
Okay. We can spend some time afterwards. I think we should wrap it up at 4:15. And, you know, I'm always available. I brought some cards. So I'm always available by phone. So let's have the 1, 2, 3, 4. This woman hasn't spoken at all, so I'm going to let her go first. The 4 people, and then we're going to wrap it up. Okay?
Through the whole process, we have never addressed the character of a neighborhood. And I think we are moving beyond the character of a neighborhood to the culture of a neighborhood. We are losing on permanent residents. If we had a family who wanted to buy in Lake Tahoe and become a permanent resident, I believe we're changing this culture of our city so much in R1 zoning. They're not going to want to because they're going to be next to VHRs surrounding them. So we have to. So my suggestion would be, how do we encourage potential buyers to buy in our city or county if we keep inundating our residential neighborhoods with VHRs? Do we start limiting them now? Do we ban them altogether?
Well, that's my question to you all.
Well, that's what my question would be.
So your suggestion would be to ban them altogether? Is that, am I hearing you right?
Ban them altogether or limit them so that we are not discouraging long-term renters or or potential buyers to come into our city.
Yeah. The problem with limiting though is then you have someone who's already had it, someone who wants it, the person who wants it can't have it, but that person can have it. So then they can potentially, that could be a litigation issue.
We're restricting the resale.
I think the issue would be, if we're gonna ban it, it has to be banned. If there's gonna be a moratorium, it needs to be a moratorium so that we can encapsulate this thing. You guys get your arms around it, and then we can figure out what to do with who's already got it. Because to say no to this person, but these people have it, this person may be
I'm not saying
suing.
anything about no to anybody.
It's like
I'm
keeping
just saying
horses. They
you're
were
changing the
grandfathered.
culture of our neighborhood so much by allowing this influx
agree.
of VHRs.
I do have a couple more comments, and then I'd like to wrap it up. And we will stay for a while, so we'd be happy to take additional notes. So,
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of quick things that address some of the comments here relative to zoning, because I came prepared to talk about zoning today. And the fact that this is not in compliance with the TRPA Code of Ordinances and the general plan, and you have some conflicting code sections in your own code that perhaps need to be looked at. Having said that,
which ones I need to know?
This is a land use issue. I mean, I think, we all know about zoning, it's land use. And that demands that qualified planners be brought into this process to make sure that there is no injury to the neighborhood. That's a basic tenet of land use planning. The city of South Lake Tahoe does require a public hearing, and neighbors are notified before a VHR is issued. So I think, and frankly, from looking at this, I think TRPA would find that this is not adequate and does not address what their code of ordinances requires.
So you're asking the county
We have, Sue Nomisal happens to be on a committee with the.
I'm actually on the board, governing board of TRPA, and it is an allowable use as per the regional plan update that vacation home rentals are considered
With a caveat.
as residential units.
With a caveat, I'll read it to you. Let me see. All right. TRPA regulations form the basis for many of our land use issues. In 2012, TRPA amended its regional plan by including vacation rentals in its definition of single-family dwellings, provided they meet local government neighborhood compatibility requirements. These are defined as requirements implemented and enforced by a local government through a cooperative agreement with TRPA that regulate vacation rentals to ensure.
I actually sent you that, but yes, that's absolutely.
No, I read the code through till 1:30 last night. This regulates vacation rentals to ensure neighborhood compatibility. And such requirements include, but are not limited to, mitigating the potential adverse impacts related to refuse, garbage, parking, occupancy, noise, lighting, and signage. I would like to have a copy of the signed cooperative agreement between the county and TRPA, because TRPA doesn't really know how you're administering this.
TRPA, our governing board of TRPA met this year, and it was agreed upon with TRPA and the governing board in a public meeting that we are meeting the requirements. Our local jurisdictions, all of them are meeting the requirements of that statute.
No.
Sir, can I comment on that?
No, wait a minute.
I just want to make that statement.
Wait a minute. Okay, your recommendation is your potential problem-solving solution.
My problem-solving solution is that we go back to using generally accepted land use planning concepts in issuing these permits, which would allow for some public comment and some scrutiny, not just handing them out indiscriminately. And that then gives neighbors an opportunity to say, these are the concerns that I have, this is what I've seen, this is maybe a condition that you should place on this particular use.
Okay. So additional planning scrutiny, a contract or what agreement with TRPA. Okay, help me out.
You got it.
I just want to make sure that their notes are is what you're asking for.
Yeah.
And and then allowance. The other thing I heard was allowance of the neighbors to somehow or another voice their opinions regarding. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I have one other issue that I just wanted to bring up because it came up at the Board of Supervisors meeting. So at the Board of Supervisors meeting, you indicated it would be illegal right now without an ordinance amendment to require that these people post a sign on the exterior of the building.
What I said was, is if in our ordinance right now, it states it's internal, we don't have an ordinance, which means it's not legal to require people to put a sign outside. We don't have that ability to do that until we revise our ordinance, which is what Sherry's talking about.
Well, you do have an administrative remedy there. I understand the difference between internal and external signage. Your own provision in the ordinance, I'll read it to you. Let's see, where did it go? The Sheriff's Department, here it is, enforcement of order, or enforcement of chapter, section 5.56.180. The sheriff or his or her designee is hereby authorized and directed to establish such rules and regulations as may from time to time be required to carry out the purpose and intent of this chapter. Substantive changes to this chapter can only be made by the Board of Supervisors.
Right, that would be a substantive change.
I don't agree that that
Well,
would be
that's something
substantive.
county council would have. I'll have county council.
Yeah, I wish you would, because I don't even believe that, I believe that most of the vacation rental owners would embrace that, because they would rather that we contact them
I would agree.
as opposed to the sheriff.
And I just want you to know, I agree 100%.
Okay.
I just didn't think that that was a remedy. I would check with our county
Okay.
council if it is. I'm happy to change that, because I agree. I want those signs on the outside.
Yeah.
Please, yeah.
Thank you.
I'll check.
This gentleman, and then I'm going to wrap it up, but everybody can meet with us afterwards. Anything that you say afterwards, I will ask them to put on the list, okay? So I'm just going to let other people Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yours.
I wanted to just address that TRPA's single-family dwelling permissible use language states, quote, unquote, vacation rentals are included provided they meet the local government neighborhood compatibility requirements. Now that's very clear language, and the county has absolutely no neighborhood compatibility requirements documented, either researched or written up. They have nothing. The only thing, can I finish? The only thing the county has,
About this already.
no,
Yes.
I'm not finished. The only thing the county has is a VHR ordinance, which is not and does not serve as a neighborhood compatibility requirements document. We don't have anything. That was a step that was passed.
Where did you, where's the definition of that? Of the neighborhood?
Well, I did a bunch of research on that, and most other cities and counties actually do research ahead of time, and they draft a neighborhood compatibility requirements or guidelines, and then they do that before they issue special use permits, which is what these VHRs should be under.
That's.
We have no
And they
local
don't
government
require-
neighborhood
they don't
compatibility
require-
requirements document. We have nothing.
We'll let
Yeah.
this discussion on that particular point go forward after the meeting. This gentleman is the last person,
Thank
a
you.
solution-oriented.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just curious, have you seen an increase in vacation rentals, a plateau, or decrease? I'm guessing increase. So just to my earlier point about forcing this increasing amount of renters to existing, if there is a moratorium, the other thing that I think will happen, and this reminds me of Prohibition, where alcohol production did not cease, it went underground. My concern is that you're going to force people underground. I am fully licensed, I do everything according to requirements. I know there's people that are probably renting that do not have licenses. So my fear is that by placing a moratorium, two things will happen. One is, as I said earlier, you're going to force people to the existing rentals, which will add to the problems. But secondly, you're going to force people to circumvent your licensing requirements. So they're going to rent their homes on their own. And you currently don't have enough resources to handle the licensed vacation rental owners. How are you going to handle the unlicensed? That would be my question. So I am against a moratorium because I think it will simply increase the problem.
We'll take our chance.
I'm going to close the meeting, but everybody, we're going to stick around for a while.
Thank you. Thank you,
yes,
Sherry.
I will.